Welcome everybody. People may continue to trickle in, hopefully they will. Thank you for joining us for the Meet the Publishers session. I'm Ed Needle from Taylor & Francis and Paul Sayer is with me from Wiley-Blackwell. So we've both got presentations. I'm going to play my video and then Paul's going to talk to you about life cycle of a book and a few other bits and pieces, and then we're happy to take any questions at all at the end. So hopefully we can have a bit of a Q&A and answer any of your questions about publishing. We both represent the book side of Taylor & Francis and Wiley. That's correct, isn't it, Paul?
That's correct, yeah.
But I'm sure we can cobble together some answers on journals if people have got questions. And if not, I'm sure we can get back to people if they have any burning questions. So I will mute myself. Play the video. Hello everyone, welcome to the Meet the Publishers session for the ARCOM 2021 conference. My name is Ed Needle. I'm the senior editor for construction and real estate at Taylor & Francis Books, and I'm going to be talking to you briefly about Taylor & Francis, giving you an overview of us as a company, a little bit about what we do and our content, before talking through mainly about the books business and our books portfolio and the process of publishing a book with Taylor & Francis. These are some of our imprints, which you may be familiar with. Routledge, CRC Press are the two main imprints. Routledge on the social sciences and humanities side, built environment coming under that, but CRC Press also the harder engineering STEM subjects, including civil engineering, would come under CRC Press. And we have a number of smaller imprints like Dove Press on the medical side, Cogent, which is one of our OA imprints, and our most recent acquisition, F1000 Research, which is an open source, open research publisher. We're primarily known for publishing books and journals. Here are a few examples of recent new books and some of our flagship journals in this particular field. I work specifically on the books side of the business, so the focus of the rest of the presentation is primarily on books. However, I am happy to take any journals related questions at the end and do my best to answer them for you. A few numbers for you. Taylor & Francis have over 4.6 million peer-reviewed journal articles currently available on our journals platform, TNF Online. The website's below there. We have 2,700 journals, 140,000 backlist books, and approximately we're currently publishing 7,000 new books per year across all of the disciplines that we publish in. Within the TNF built environment portfolio, we have over 6,200 books, 102 journals, and over 114,000 peer-reviewed journal articles. And I've included a few links to the websites there, should you wish to access them and get more information or browse some of our content. We don't just publish books and journals. We are increasingly now interested in other formats and other publishing models. Open access in particular is a growth area. I'm sure many of you are well aware of that. Taylor & Francis is one of the world's largest publishers of open access research, and our OA output is growing at a pace. We are a member of the Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association and a publisher member of the Directory of Open Access Books. All of our content is also deposited in the Open Access Publishing, the European networks, and we're keen to discuss OA with new and existing authors to explore funding opportunities for those who are new to working with us, but also if you have published with us already and have found yourself with access to funding, you might want to use that to make existing materials open access, and we're happy to talk to you about that too. Online products and platforms are becoming increasingly important for us, and we now offer a number of subject collections of ebooks to libraries through our own ebook platform. And we also have a number of online encyclopedias and primary resource archives available. One example I've included here on this slide is the Sustainable Development Goals Online product. And that is a UN-endorsed digital collection of Taylor and Francis content, which we've organised by development goal. And that is available for libraries to purchase and institutions to purchase. Ebooks obviously are on the march and have been for some time, especially during the pandemic, and we've seen a lot of growth in online and ebook sales. The Ebook Plus model is something that we are now beginning to explore, and that would be different to a standard ebook, which is really an exact copy of the text as you would find in a hard copy. The Ebook Plus might include embedded videos, interactive questions, adaptable figures, those kinds of things, and we're beginning to see more of an interest and play around with these things a lot more, so I think that they'll become more mainstream in the years to come. We do create 20 plus formats of ebook. We do not create the Kindle book. Kindle is created by Amazon, not the publisher, but we do create EPUBs, and we supply particularly our ebooks through VitalSource. For those of you who are considering publishing a book, let me just give you an overview of the types of books that we publish at Taylor & Francis. And I'll start with a textbook. Textbooks, and there's some examples on this page, on this slide, are aimed at introducing a student to a subject at any level, whether that's first year undergraduate or master's. They're based on compulsory or optional courses taught at a number of universities and colleges, and that would be the key to their success. The success of a textbook would also be dependent on whether the subject, how widely the subject is taught, and the number of international universities that teach that specific topic, and whether the text covers all those topics, all the topics that a particular course would cover. How engaging the writing is and accessible it is for the student audience, and any other kind of useful features or accompanying materials that might come with that particular book. And then how much it compares with competing books, because usually textbooks, there's usually more than one choice. The textbook market can be a crowded place. Monographs and reference books. These are high-level works that are primarily aimed at researchers and academics and any kind of interested professionals in any given subject area. We publish these hardback and ebook first, and a paperback edition may follow around 18 months later, depending on sales. Most copies would initially be sold to institutions such as academic libraries rather than individuals. And the product's success would hinge on a number of factors. Is the work of a high academic standard? Is the material cutting edge and innovative? Is the author a recognized authority or expert in this particular field? And does the material have a strong potential for international sales? Because we want to sell these books to as many international libraries as possible. Despite the name monograph, we do take this category to include edited collections as well as multiple authored works. And you can see a few examples there. Professional books at TNF are considered to be practical guides designed for use by practitioners and primarily bought and accessed in response to a specific event or need that they have in their professional career to upskill or add some professional value. Within the built environment disciplines, we find that these books are often on university reading lists as well, due to the practical nature of a lot of the subjects. And these books tend to have a very large potential audience, but equally can be hard to reach for a specialist publisher who doesn't necessarily advertise in trade magazines or at all of the major international conferences and things like that. Handbooks and companions are reference works again, but They provide an overview of a whole subject area or a sub-discipline, and they're usually edited collections, and they kind of survey the state of the discipline. They include emerging information, emerging research, cutting-edge content, cutting-edge chapters, and potentially a bit of a historical overview as well. They are organised thematically, usually, sometimes geographically, and published in hardback and ebook with an option to publish in paperback later. Contributors would normally be drawn from an international pool and a mixture of well-established academics, but also rising stars and more junior academics under a good editor team. Primarily, we sell these, much like the monographs and reference works, to the international academic library market. But these books would be used and perhaps purchased by some academics, researchers, and postgraduates. And even we do have many examples of when a paperback comes out, these books are adopted as course textbooks at a master's level. Finally, then, a word on the life cycle of a book, just to finish off the presentation and hopefully stimulate some questions as well. And this is a general overview that will apply to the majority of academic and professional publishers. So it all starts with an idea from an author or a team of editors or an editor. And that formulates into a proposal, usually a document supplied by the publisher. Once the proposal is submitted to the publisher, the editor, such as myself, will comment and give feedback. And then once it's agreed that the proposal is ready, it will go out to external reviewers and referees for comments. Once those are received, they'll be sent back to the authors or editors, and revisions and responses will be expected if necessary. At that point, if the editor is happy and the authors are happy, the project will be taken to the publishing committee by the editor, the internal editor at the publisher, and it will either be approved or rejected. If it's approved, a contract will be offered, negotiated, and agreed. And then the writing might take 6 months to 2 years, depending on the nature of the book itself. The manuscript will be submitted under guidance from the publisher, and the publisher will be on hand to answer questions as the author team or the editor team prepares the manuscript. The production phase, copy editing, typesetting, proofreading, normally takes 5 to 6 months, depending on the size of the book and the number of people involved and the number of contributors involved. The peruser returns to the authors, corrections are made, the index is created, and finally the files are distributed internationally, and the book is then officially published. In the meantime, the book is marketed to a global contact database, made available for sale by numerous distributors and promoted through social media, conferences, and in particular the authors. We like to work closely with our authors to promote their works because they often have the best contacts. That's it from me. That was a very quick introduction to Taylor & Francis and an overview of our book publishing program. I'm happy to take questions at the end. Thank you for your time, and please do contact me at the email address there if you'd like to reach out with book ideas or questions after the conference. I hope you've enjoyed the conference. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Ed. I'm Paul Sayre. I'm a publisher for construction and civil engineering at John Wiley, and I've got a short video to play, and then a couple of slides which just pick up a few points that Ed was making on his final slide there, the life cycle of a book. So I've got a little bit more of a deep dive into a couple of those. So I will play the video first and then run through those slides, and we can then take questions.
The greatest benefit to being an author is having a platform to share your ideas with others.
Obviously, there's a big credibility boost that goes along with having your name on a published technical work. And so my co-author and I enjoyed the extra credibility, the extra publicity that came from having our name on a work that was published through a company like Wiley, who's very prestigious and well known within the industry.
And also it makes it easier to get funding, for example, because many times the people who are deciding this funding, they may have actually learned from your textbook.
Think about what is the story that you want to tell, who is your audience, and try to be that audience and write for the audience.
The process was really easy. The team was great to work with, very responsive. And so we, as first-time authors, my co-author and I had a really positive experience working with Wiley.
Our most recent book was actually using Python. So again, that was needs and requests coming from the audience who was teaching and who was learning. And we keep updating. We have a few new editions coming in, again, to address these needs of the audience. And we've been with Wiley, trying to think, the first book was 2006. So it's quite a long time now, yeah.
I would definitely encourage others that are thinking about writing a book to use Wiley as their publisher. They're known worldwide, internationally, ~1, so your book will have a wide audience of readers that will be able to access it.
It is nice to see a book on Amazon, to see your name, to see people writing reviews, and then perhaps getting compliments from colleagues. It was fun. It was a very good feeling.
Being able to actually see the work of an entire year published like this, looking so professional and so official, and really codifying and documenting everything that my co-author and I had worked so hard to learn and to practice for the past few years. It was really a proud moment. It was a big accomplishment and a big success for us.
Your name gets well known in the community, and therefore, you are likely to be accepted more widely, and you're also teaching the teachers who then teach their own students. So it's kind of a force multiplier.
And at the end of the day, they did push us. We had planned to kind of do this as a hobby, and they helped us to put together a schedule that was going to actually get this book out in an appropriate amount of time and finish that off. And it turned out to be, it turned out to be a great success for us, and we're really happy that we were able to work with them and let them guide us through that process.
I've gone through this experience 6 times. So, every time it's exciting and it doesn't get boring. They have been translated in cumulative of 9 languages. So I couldn't have asked for more. I think I'm very satisfied.
Deliverer had dropped off some courtesy copies of the textbook that the publisher will give to the author. So I'm all excited. I bring this up, and my family's there. I start, opening it up like it's Christmas time, and then to see that textbook with your name on it was really a good moment to share.
They asked me, would you like to write a book that was like an introductory book that could be used at conferences and classes and even in universities? And I actually hadn't thought of it. I actually had no plans to write a book. And it was that spur of idea to do it from Wiley. It's really the reason that I wrote it.
I would absolutely encourage any other authors, first time, second time, career authors, to consider publishing with Wiley. The whole process was very smooth. There was plenty of communication, but no micromanaging, no nagging. They made the whole thing very seamless.
I think the final product works well, and we have support from the marketing teams when we need them to reach out to instructors. So yes, I would say definitely, if you're lucky to get a contract with Wiley, go for it.
Okay, so I'd just like to now pick up on a few points that Ed was making earlier on his final slide, and just talk through a few things about the life cycle of a book, and 1 or 2 things that, if you're considering writing a book, you might like to think about. So as Ed said, the first idea, the first sort of spring of an idea you have, you need to get that into some sort of format and into some sort of proposal that you can present to a publisher. And your proposal really is the sort of the what, the why, and the how. What are you going to write? Why are you going to write it? Why is it important to write? Why will people read it? And how are you going to do it? Is it going to be a textbook? Is it going to be a multi-authored book? Is it going to be a professional book, an edited book, and that kind of thing? So in order to sort of help you get those thoughts in order, then I always ask these 4 questions. To consider these 4 questions in helping you to clarify your thoughts and really get them down into a proposal, which of course is your pitch to the publisher. So, who is the book written for? What new skills or what new knowledge will the reader gain from reading the book? How will it help them achieve their academic or professional goals? And what books are currently available? What's the competition? And how will your book stand out to a potential purchaser? So, thinking about those questions helps you organize your thoughts and helps you to get that information down into a proposal document, which your potential publisher will give you, and that proposal, that pitch, is really the first point at which you get your ideas down on paper and can start to really kind of make your ideas concrete. And once the publisher receives that proposal, there'll be some kind of evaluation process. Your publisher will evaluate it on a number of criteria that they use. So, is there scope for the book? Will it fit with the list that the publisher is building? So Ed talked about different types of book. He talked about textbooks, talked about professional and professional books, reference books. And if your publisher, the publisher you're thinking about, doesn't have a textbook program, for example, there's not much point in submitting a proposal for a textbook to them. But the publisher will look at your proposal and will evaluate it on the basis of those sorts of criteria, and then we'll also do some peer review. So again, some experts in the field, your peers, your colleagues. What do they think about the proposal? Is it right for the market? Have you covered all of the necessary information in your proposal? Those kind of questions. And that information will come back to you. It'll be usually it's anonymized. So peer review is often double blind, and that information then comes back to you. And if at that stage, then the editor at the publisher and yourself, you believe there's a viable project here, then the publisher will build a business case, an internal business case for approval, and hopefully sign off. And if that business case is approved and signed off, then the publisher will offer you a contract. So once you've got the contract, the next stage is writing. And that can be challenging. You're set out on a road to write 100,000 words, 120,000 words, 150,000 words, whatever it is. And again, how are you going to structure that? How are you going to be able to produce a compelling document? And I think the answer there is again to focus on the reader. Keep coming back to who is the book written for? What new skills or knowledge will they gain from reading the new book? How will it help them achieve their academic or professional goals? Focusing on the reader, putting yourself in the reader's place and thinking about the kinds of things you need in your work and the kind of things that you like to read and that will help you, do the same thing, get that down on paper and get that out to the reader. And then finally, once you've written your manuscript, once you've turned those ideas into text, how is that manuscript turned into a book? Well, you submit to the publisher does some things in the background, and out pops a book. It's not quite as straightforward as that. As again, Ed mentioned, copy editing, typesetting, proofreading. So there are a number of things that the publisher then does to take that raw manuscript, and turn it into a printed book. But remember that the publisher's done it many, many, many times. It may be your first time, it may be your second, third, fourth, fifth time. But if there's any part of the process you're not sure about, if there's anything you don't understand or whatever, ask the publisher. The publisher is there to work with you to bring this to successful publication. And there's nothing better than having a very engaged author. So keep in communication with the publisher, keep talking to them, and find out what they're doing, and what the next phases are, what the next steps are. And then finally, marketing. I'm saying finally, I mean marketing starts prior to book publication and goes on well beyond publication. But the publisher again will market the book to potential readers and to booksellers worldwide, and we'll have a range of different means and mechanisms to do that, from direct mail to potential readers, through to sort of automated delivery of book metadata to organizations like Amazon and such. But the author has a strong role to play in marketing as well. There's no better marketer for a book than the author. So I've put as my final bullet there, if you like, the author could, in brackets should. It very much depends on how the author feels about it, but the author could do things like, on social media, share the information that you've published a book with your network, on the web. Look for opportunities to blog about your book, or to put a YouTube video together, or maybe to share the talk or a table of contents or an abstract or whatever on various sharing websites. Think about conferences. What conferences are you going to, and who will be there, and can you take some material there, a copy of the book, some marketing material or whatever, that you could show to people, and use your email. You send probably many emails a day. So can you put a little link in your signature that links through to the book on Amazon or your publisher's website? But all of those sorts of things are the kind of additional marketing that goes hand in hand with the sort of the things that your publisher will do, and hopefully will help to lodge that book in people's minds and deliver the success that you and your publisher are looking for. Okay, so that's my final slide. So thanks for listening, and now we'll open the floor to questions.
Apollo has asked. Where has it gone?
I've got it here, Ed. Is there a guide to the volume of sales publishers consider to represent viability? I think that's a really interesting question. I suspect the answer. I hope Ed would agree with me, but I suspect the answer depends very much on what sort of book it is. So a textbook, which maybe has a worldwide market, the potential sales there might be thousands or even tens of thousands of copies. For a specialist book with a relatively small market of researchers and academics, the answer there might be 300, 400, 500, 600. Might be the maximum market you could expect to sell to.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Paul. I think things are changing as well. You know, print sales have been on the decline for some time, and ebook sales are rising. And given the various different ways which ebook content can be sold or rented, it's actually sometimes quite hard to quantify the exact sales in terms of units. And then there's also the added point about readership and rather than sales. You know, how many people are actually reading the work and citing it? You know, who are accessing it through a library or renting it, or getting hold of it by another means, and making use of it that way rather than actually purchasing it. Somebody's hand up. Does that mean that we can?
Richmond's asked a question. Could any of you speak a little more about how to go about an edited book? Ed, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I mean, it can be. It's compared to herding cats often from editors that I've spoken to, and it can be very time-consuming. But equally, it can be a very good way to share the workload with colleagues, and also to almost have an instant network for a book built, and an instant marketing network. I think a lot of people will make use of things like CMBR, put calls out on there, and I think a lot of good edited books have come from conferences and meetings where people have got together over coffee and sort of had a chat and shared their research interests and thought, you know what, there's definitely a few of us working in similar fields, and we could pull together something which really surveys the state of a discipline or does something new. I think, the best edited books are ones with international editors, anything from sort of 1 to 4, I'd say, and who each then take a very proactive role in recruiting contributors and chapter contributors, and then potentially manage a small section, and then come together to write an introduction, a conclusion, potentially an introduction to each section if necessary. And I would say, if you're thinking about embarking on an edited book, try to talk to colleagues who've done it before, or talk to the publisher. Just bounce the idea around and see. It might be that we as publishers know other people who are interested in editing a book and might want to work with you, or even just contribute chapters. You know, we often get people email us saying, I'm interested in writing a chapter on this, but we might not actually have a book to fit that chapter. It's always worth asking.
Agreed. The only other thing I would add to that is that in terms of the... I've got a bit of an echo, sorry. Let me just try that. In terms of the initial process, then again you'll need a proposal document, and it'd be very, very similar to the document for an authored book. You just need to make clear that you are thinking about an edited book, and there include in the proposal the sorts of people you might like to invite to write the chapters. I think from a process point of view, that's about the only difference.
One of the biggest criticisms that we receive of edited books is that there's not been a golden thread that is present throughout the book, and that, I think, one of the things I would advise if you're thinking about editing a book is to write a fairly tight brief for your chapter contributors for them to stick to. Really have a clear idea of the vision. There are two ways of going about an edited book. One is to contact people and ask them and invite them. The other is to put a call out. Both work, but I do think that there's a lot more. It's a lot more challenging to piece together things that have come from an open call than it is to target specific colleagues you know are experts and that will write you a good chapter.
So we've got a question from Colin. Hello, Colin. I've published 9 books to date, which have included both TNF and Wiley-Blackwell. I've recently agreed to write a second edition of my climate change book. What drivers do publishers use to determine whether second, third, etc. editions are required? Sales, profit, market demand? The answer is all of those things. If someone came to us and asked about a second edition of a book which had not sold particularly well, then we would have to have some very strong reasons, if you like, or guidance that might suggest that a new edition would be more successful commercially. I think sales are quite clearly for a commercial organization like Wiley or Taylor and Francis, sales and profitability are very, very important. Market demand is equally important. So is there a groundswell of desire, if you like, for a new edition of a particular book? And changes in technology, changes in understanding, changes in the way the industry is perceived, the way construction is perceived. That's often a good reason for publishing a new edition, where if you look at, I'm trying to think of an example. If you look at the change in emphasis on sustainability, for example, the emphasis has shifted from 10 years ago, 5 years ago to now. The emphasis has changed, and often that change in emphasis or change in understanding can be a very, very strong driver for a new edition. But I guess the short answer is all of those things. Sales are important, profits important, market demand's important, and marketplace is important. And it's really a case of making a judgment on all of that information to see whether a new edition is warranted. In which case, should we wait to be chased or should we chase you? Both.
No harm in asking, I think. Yeah. There's no harm in asking, but be prepared to be disappointed in case the answer is no. It's always nice to hear that somebody is willing to work on a new edition. So by all means, approach a publisher and say, is there any appetite for a new edition of my book given recent changes? Or we will always look at the sales, and we are making a commercial decision. But as Paul said, if there are big shifts that need to be addressed in the book, perhaps it provides an opportunity for a second chance at a kind of a relaunch. If the book, you never know. It's sometimes hard to pinpoint the exact reason why a book might not have sold. One book might not have sold as well as another book. You can do various different forms of analysis, but sometimes it's just timing. And so maybe a second edition gives you the opportunity to relaunch at a better time or a more appropriate time.
Are there any other questions?
Apollo's typing. Thanks for attending, Pippa. Richmond has a very interesting question there, Paul. What happens if an author is not able to meet the deadline promised to finish a book? Well, what happens? You'd be chased by the publisher, but it's not an uncommon thing. I'm sure Paul will corroborate that. I'm still chasing manuscripts down that I agreed to publish in 2015 and should have been submitted in 2016, 2017. So these things happen. We're very flexible. We understand how busy everybody is. We understand particularly how busy academics are. We work with academics constantly, so we know the pressures and the time pressures. And I think publishers appreciate that writing a book is difficult. It's a large, difficult task, and it also is something that potentially is not you're not being financially rewarded immediately for it. There's not often a huge upfront payment, so you have to pay your bills and you have to do your day job, and the book writing is almost an added extra or vocational exercise. But we just ask that you communicate with us. If you've agreed to hit a deadline and it doesn't look realistic, then just let us know and we can rework the schedules. That's the main thing I would say, is just communication. We just want to know if you're not going to meet the deadline and we can work around it.
I think that's right. I think that honest conversation about when is what is a potential schedule for completion, and sometimes it gets to the point where an author might say, well, actually, because of X, Y, and Z, and I've got a couple on my list. I recently took over a maths and statistics program as well, and there's a couple of authors on there where through no fault of ours and no fault of theirs, one of them is particularly ill. It's just not going to be feasible for them to complete the book. So you take a decision and you agree with them that we cancel the contract. Richmond's asking, how do the authors make money from the books they author? All authors will be paid a royalty on the books that they author. That royalty is reasonably standard across the industry, I think. And then there are other ways of making money out of it. I have a little anecdote that I sometimes pull out is I went to meet a consultant who was an author of ours. I'd never met him before. I'd taken over his project, and pretty much the first thing he did when we sat down to talk, he sort of banged a copy on the desk and slapped it and said, "That's my calling card. That's what I've built my consulting business on." And so there are other ways of making money over and above royalties, but I think for most people, the financial gain is not the main reason that they would embark on writing a book that we published by Wiley or Taylor and Francis.
Please comment on processes for journals, new journal titles. I can comment by saying I think it is quite hard to establish a new journal these days with a publisher like Taylor and Francis. I think that the TNF Journals team are really only acquiring existing journals at the moment, and those would be journals which are usually tied in some way to a society. So an example, within the built environment, TNF recently acquired the American Real Estate Society journals, I think 4 or 5 journals tied to the American Real Estate Society, and started publishing those. But they're obviously very established. They come with their own network. And I can't honestly think of an example of a journal in this field which has been started from scratch by us anytime recently. It's pretty rare.
I think the hurdle is high, but if there's interest, then the process, if you like, is similar. You would have to interest a publisher. The publisher would have to make an evaluation of the market and the potential for the journal, and it would proceed from there. But as Ed says, it's not a particularly common occurrence in many publishers at the moment. But that interestingly does lead on to the next question from Pekka. Concerning journals, do you have, as the leading publisher, some common ethical policy or agenda which will keep you apart from those publishing so-called predator journals with fees, membership on editorial boards, etc.? I mean, that's a really important and really interesting question. I think the answer to that is very complex and would maybe take a long time to go into. I know at Wiley we have an ethical we have a group which manages the ethics of journal publishing, and I think all of the major established publishers would say the same thing, that we try to work with academe, with industry, with partners, societies, and organizations that have standing, and hopefully the publishers themselves have that standing as well, and try and use that as a means to ensure that everything we do is ethical. I think in any system where an author is paying to publish, then there is the chance of malpractice. But I would hope that all of those established publishers, and you can there's many hundreds of them, all of those established publishers would have nothing to do with that part of the industry.
It is difficult, and I think that the waters have been muddied by the prominence of open access funding and publishing, which meaning that people money is being exchanged for publishing, but there are more legitimate and more professional, non-predatory open access publishers out there, and most of the big publishers are now offering an open access publishing option in response to the desire from the market, from the authors, from you. I think it's a question of just verifying as much as possible by doing your research. If you're suspicious, if you're being approached, as best you can. Richmond's asked, what are publishers like Wiley and Taylor & Francis' position on author licensing collecting society efforts to collect proceeding? Yeah, I mean, that's built into our contract. I've forgotten the exact wording, but it is something that we encourage people to register for, and then I think that's quite a good way to earn extra revenue on your books, isn't it, Paul?
Yeah,
some people do earn reasonable amount, actually.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Richmond. Thanks, Apollo. Thanks, Craig. I hope it has been useful. Maybe we'll just hang around for a few more minutes to see if anyone else has any questions. But thank you very much for attending.
Yes, thanks everyone.
When the idea for book falls on generic knowledge area, ED strategic management in the context is construction. Well, I think, Pekka, the answer is that Paul or I would be interested, I'm sure, in looking at a proposal on strategic management in construction. Those are absolutely topics that both of us cover, and I'm pretty sure about that. So you could happily talk to either of us about that if you wanted to. And I think if you approached within Taylor & Francis the business studies team, they would probably come and talk to me anyway. And I think you'd be more likely, again, it goes back to that question of audience, you'd be more likely to hit the audience that you're writing for, especially if your audience is ARCOM members, for example, if you publish with Paul or I, as opposed to a management or business editor, I would say. because we are much more engaged with this particular community.
Yes, I think that's very true. Once again, thank you everyone for attending. If you've got any additional questions, then feel free to reach out to Ed or to myself, or indeed to both of us, and I'm sure we'll do our best to answer them and to get the information that you're after.
Great, thanks everyone. Nice to see you as well, Paul.
Yeah, good to see you, Ed.
Yeah,
it's been a while.
Yes, yeah. But perhaps in person in 2022, maybe.
Maybe, fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone. Bye for now.